I replayed Final Fantasy 15 and now I'm tackling its story-based downloadable content. When 15 first released, big criticism was major gaps in its storytelling, key parts of the plot happening off-screen.
Insomnia Falls. What?
So I wanted to find out, does the DLC do a good job of filling those gaps, and does the DLC make Final Fantasy 15 a better experience overall? There's 4 DLC story episodes, each focusing on a different character: Gladio, Prompto, Ignis, and our antagonist, Ardyn. I'm going to rank them all at the end, and first up is episode Gladiolus. Right away, this has a very different tone from the main game. It's all about the combat. Gameplay feels heavier, slower, more weighty, and the soundtrack is metal as hell. The whole experience is thematic with Gladio and his rugged warrior energy. I like it. If you played Final Fantasy 15, you might remember there's a point where Gladio suddenly leaves the party.
Well, see you around, guys.
And when he comes back, he's got a brand new scar with barely a word of explanation.
Anyway, I'm back, and better than ever.
Episode Gladiolus is finally filling in that gap. After Gladio gets his ass kicked in the main story, he's haunted by his failure as Shield of the King. He's hungry for more power and undergoes the trial of the Blade Master to become stronger.
And what is it you hope to glean?
Power. And you're gonna give it to me.
Gameplay is more close quarters and surprisingly fun. There's a bigger focus on blocking, timing, and it's super satisfying reacting with counterattacks that hit like a truck. There's a unique rage mechanic. The multiplier increases as you block and parry attacks, increasing your damage output and rewarding defensive play. Look, I'd still rather have turn-based Final Fantasy, but I quite enjoyed this. Core gameplay feels pretty good. You can even rip giant stone pillars out of the environment to clobber enemies. There's a handful of bosses, including Gilgamesh and his companion Enkidu, and we even get to see the exact moment Gladio gets his scar. It's a fun fight, even if I'm not a huge fan of Gilgamesh's design here. I kinda wish it leaned closer to his classic look. Core the Immortal plays a supporting role, and while he was barely in the main game, this DLC has some great campfire scenes where Core talks about Gladio's father and what it really means to carry the title of Shield of the King. Some actual character development are really appreciated. The whole thing is just over an hour long, basically a single dungeon, few bosses, fantastic soundtrack with some extra challenges if you want to push the combat even further. And that's a running theme with 15 story DLC. It's short, focused bursts of story. But I was genuinely surprised. Episode Gladiolus was pretty fun. Before we get into Prompto's DLC, if you're a huge fan of RPGs, consider subbing to Bytes or liking the video. I'm a bit of an indie game developer, cover lots of RPGs, and you might like my Final Fantasy series where I'm replaying them all and ranking them as I go. Thank you. Episode Prompto fills in more gaps, specifically what happened when Prompto gets knocked off a train and disappears for a while. Core gameplay is okay, but it's more gunplay focused. It's a little janky and awkward trying to aim grenades, machine guns and sniper rifles. You can tell 15's engine wasn't exactly tailored for this kind of gameplay. I haven't played it in ages, but the gunplay reminds me a little of Dirge of Cerberus, but it's a bit better here. Where this one actually shines is character development. We explore Prompto's insecurities, identity, and we get to work alongside Aranea, which is always a win.
Prompto, right?
Prompto passes out and is captured by the Empire. This is where we learn he was created by them. He's a clone of Versteel. And if you can't remember who that is, he's one of the Empire's bad guys that we barely see in Final Fantasy 15.
Born of my own flesh and blood.
Again, soundtrack is top notch. Love the lo-fi vibes and chill beats while you're wandering these snowy mountains and facilities. The game even hands you this sweet little snowbag to explore the region. We're working alongside Aranea with the goal of dismantling one of the Empire's new weapons and just so happen to cross with Versteel. There's also a robot gorilla fight that has you running around the room to utilize weapons on different weapon racks. Then for a final boss, Versteel pilots a giant worm robot which is an on-rail shooting section. It's not great. So while I wasn't impressed by the combat and the gunplay, there's some pretty important stuff for Prompto here. I think it's criminal that these major story points and developments were absent from the base game.
I was created in some laboratory.
I believe we were supposed to get an episode Aranea DLC as well, but it was cancelled. And as one of my favourite characters in 15, I do like that she at least gets involved in the story here.
Couldn't have done it without you, girl. Seriously though,
Next, episode Ignis definitely feels like the most crucial DLC, covering the events in Alticia where the party split up, and when reunited, Ignis is just blind with little to no explanation.
Ah, small sacrifice in the greater battle.
We're fending off the Empire while trying to reach and rescue an unconscious Noctis, and the normally level-headed Ignis is overwhelmed and starting to lose its head.
Look, I'm just as worried as you are, but we can't go losing our heads.
Combat is pretty awesome, with Ignis able to dance between 3 different fighting styles, empowering his daggers with fire, ice or thunder magic, letting him melt single targets, sweep an area of enemies or dash between targets. Surprisingly sick as hell. Amid the chaos, we're suddenly facing one of the Empire's major players, a character who barely appeared in the main game of 15. I can't even remember his name. Then things get even wilder. We team up with Ravis, who's turned on the Empire and just wants to save his sister, Lunafreya.
Join me. I can secure us a way to the King and the Oracle.
Shit hits the fan, with Ravis blaming Noctis for Lunafreya's death, leading to a surprisingly emotional boss fight. What comes next might be my favourite moment across all the DLC. 15's antagonist shows himself and takes on both Ravis and Ignis. This is where we finally learn how Ignis went blind. It wasn't some physical eye injury. In an act of desperation, he borrows Noctis' ring at the Lucy, and to save his king, he's granted the power to fend off Ardyn, sacrificing his sight in the process. This moment made me genuinely love Ignis as a character, and again, absolutely criminal that this major story point wasn't in Final Fantasy 15 to begin with. It not only fills in major story gaps, it also gives characters like Ravis and Ignis far more depth.
Well, they've shown you their favor after all.
The final piece of DLC came a bit later. Episode Ardyn is dedicated to the antagonist of 15. We finally get a glimpse into Ardyn's past. Over 2,000 years ago, he wasn't a villain at all. He was an immortal healer blessed by the gods to become king, until he was betrayed and imprisoned. Left stewing in hatred, the corruption began to take root.
The path I intend to tread is paved with blood and darkness.
Eventually, the Empire gets their hands on him and try to use Ardyn as a weapon. The Empire have also captured the summon Ifrit, and I like how we get to see how Ifrit ends up under Ardyn's control.
Now, let the fireworks begin!
The gameplay unfolds entirely at Insomnia, with Ardyn launching an all-out assault designed to lure the king out, hoping to force him to summon the spirit of his brother, and that's the one who murdered his lover. You'll have to take over sectors of the city by defeating its guardians. It's pretty awesome dashing around the city, and it reminded me a little of Kingdom Hearts. You've got your own moveset, which is fun to play, and as you're playing you can descend further by progressing Ardyn's Dissension skill tree to unlock new abilities and little bonuses. But the best bit? You can freely summon Ifrit to assist. And this DLC climaxes with facing off against the king and getting some revenge on the spirit of your brother, before Bahamut intervenes and links the story threads together.
I shall not let thee become a slayer of kings.
This bit's a little awkward, but overall I thought episode Ardyn was decent. Get a little bit more of Ardyn's story, motivations, and an explanation of why Ifrit's on Ardyn's side. If I had to rank the DLC, I think episode Ignis is the best one. Absolutely critical story points that should have been in Final Fantasy 15. I have more respect for Ignis as a character after playing this DLC. Then it's kind of close, but I'm going to say episode Ardyn for getting a bit more of Ardyn's past and motivations, and it was pretty fun getting to assault Insomnia with Ifrit. Next, episode Prompto. Love the developments and backstory with Prompto. It's got my favourite soundtrack of the 4, and great getting to work alongside Aranea. Gunplay brings it down a bit, while I'd put episode Gladiolus at the bottom. I really enjoyed the weighty combat, but the story wasn't as impactful as the others. It was nice blasting through all the DLC, but they're each about 1 hour long with some optional challenges on top of that. It must have sucked being drip-fed this DLC with months or years between each one. I think the DLC does a pretty good job at filling a chunk of the holes in Final Fantasy 15, but the biggest criticism I have, I wish these DLC episodes were integrated at the main game at the story points when they actually happened. You have to access each DLC from the main menu, which most players will go into once they finish the game. These DLC are tucked away in the main menu, making them feel disconnected or like extra content that you can skip, but they really do make Final Fantasy 15's narrative stronger and more impactful. It feels like such a missed opportunity. If these were integrated seamlessly into the main game, the story would be more cohesive and less fragmented.
I wouldn't have made it all this way without you guys.
Okay, I'm gonna rank number 15 right here. It was decent. Biggest thing holding it back was the fact it's an incomplete game with chunks split off as a movie, anime, and DLC. That said, DLC was pretty good. The final, number 16 soon. In the meanwhile, I recommend my replay of Final Fantasy XIV from scratch, and that's including all its expansions. Alright, have a good one.